Welcome to the Dr. Detective, a PhD true crime podcast, the show where we bring you critical assessment based on experience. I am the Dr. Detective, your host, Troy Looney, author, writer, professor. This is also brought to you by STS Nation, the True Crime Talk channel. So thank you for collaboration. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Hackman's case, Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. There have been some new developments. We're going to run through the case if you're not familiar, and just talk about a couple things that happened. Sante Fe, New Mexico, February 26th of this year, 2025. There was a call for 911 that was placed by some workers. They lived kind of in seclusion privately for years. Gene Hackman's a well-known, famous, well-liked actor, and Betsy's a famous musician as well. So they lived in Sante Fe, New Mexico, but there was a 911 call made by some workers. At that time, they stated there was some unfortunate circumstances and they could see someone lying down from the window outside. The dispatcher talked with them and said, is this a male or female? Person said, I don't know. Please just send somebody quickly. They were asking all the required questions. Are they awake? Are they breathing? Person's like, I have no idea. I've not been inside. And so police did respond. I do have a clip of that 911 call. We're going to play that.
Down on a floor from the window. Okay.
Frantic 911 call made after Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead has emerged. A male caller is heard telling the dispatcher he's found two bodies in a property in Sante Fe in New Mexico.
Is the patient a male or a female? A female and a male, probably. I don't know, sir. Just send somebody up here real quick. Okay. Are they awake? I have no idea. Are they breathing? I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see that she's laying down on a floor from the window. Okay.
So police arrived to the location there. Unfortunately, they found Mr. Hackman and his wife, Betsy. They had passed away, and they began their investigation of the home. At that time, apparently there was an unlocked door, no signs of foul play initially, but this is very unusual. Anytime you have a death investigation, essentially, we're not quite sure what you have. You treat them accordingly as such. So you treat them all as if you're looking at everything, every detail, every factor involved in this case. So this was tragic, unfortunately, and the news was reported. The couple supposedly died apparently a week apart or so, somewhere around February 12th. And this was February 26th, so they weren't discovered for several weeks, unfortunately. And we're going to get into some of the details about what police found, what was discovered, and so forth. So this was the sheriff's deputies for that particular county that responded to their area. At the time when they arrived, they found one pet deceased inside the cage or crate. There were two other dogs present. One dog was by the wife, Betsy, kind of guarding her. And we have a clip of the body cam also when officers responded. There's no graphic scenes here, but there's a warning. So they've kind of blurred any pictures for out of respect. So we'll take a look at this body cam. These are the responding officers, their initial observation at the scene.
AC went up to him. He seems pretty friendly, but then there's another 10-7 dog around the corner of the kennel.
That's really weird. When's the last time you heard from her?
2.5 weeks ago.
Is he gonna do anything?
AC went in there. You want to go in first?
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
I guess Connell's gonna come down as well.
Okay. Try to open a couple windows if we can, just in case. Hey, Bubba.
right there.
Another dog?
Yeah, he's running around.
Where's he?
He's actually, I don't know how to get there through here. If we walk back outside, there's another door.
So he's in a totally separate spot.
Yeah.
Way separate. Like
Yeah.
he's on that side of the house.
Upstairs.
Upstairs. I thought it was kind of weird about how he was laying too.
Hey, buddy. Were these doors all open or were
Which doors?
all?
I guess they're all unlocked most of the time. I think this is the door he was talking about.
Were they open when you got here though?
That one that we first went through was open.
Relatively clean. Something smells a little funky. I just want to make sure it's not like a gas leak.
He's been down for a while.
Did you guys start photos and stuff?
No, I haven't taken photos yet.
So the thing is interesting about officers, first responders, we have the body cam view, but we're not seeing a 360-degree scan of what they're observing. Obviously, these are several sets of sheriffs that responded and detectives potentially. So when they enter the home, of course, they're looking for, as I mentioned, some doors were unlocked. Maybe that's a regular occurrence or regular just state of how they left the house. But they're looking at everything, right? So again, they're taking notes. One officer mentioned the observation of maybe some kind of odor. I wasn't sure if it was gas or what they were smelling, but all the senses are heightened. Everything is, they're being observant. So they're doing an actual preliminary investigation is what they're doing. They're looking at the condition of the victims. Upon first entrance, that was Betsy, where the dog was kind of guarding her. And then the other part of the house was Jean, unfortunately. So this is very unusual. It's kind of unusual to have multiple victims deceased, and you're kind of wondering, at first thought, maybe carbon monoxide's of issue or question or consideration, right? Maybe something else. So, of course, with the ME responding after this initial observation, they're going to do a more thorough analysis, conditions of the body. Apparently, they've been there several weeks, so there were some issues and talks about maybe mummification starting, different stages of what takes place with the body and so forth. So unfortunate event, unfortunate tragedy. They were both found deceased in the home, Jean and Betsy, and a couple of pictures there. So there were actually 3 dogs that were present. The initial news story mentioned they were deceased along with one of their pets, but there were 2 other dogs. One was present there. The other 2, one in the cage or crate, the other 2 kind of roaming, and one sitting near Betsy. So very tragic story, very sad story. Very well-known actor. And the questions that come to mind for police and sheriffs. So was there any forced entry at any point of the home? Any kind of forced entry, any signs of foul play? The dog being in the crate was a little unusual as well. Again, Betsy's found in one part of the house, the bathroom. Jean's found in another part of the house. I guess the bathroom was where Betsy was, essentially some kind of mud room where Jean was found, and the dog's still in the crate. So those kind of things stand out, or maybe have other considerations. So again, it's going to come down to the pathology and maybe pathologist. Dr. Michael Baden gives his assessment also of what he thinks may have happened or the conditions of the victims and so forth. So we'll take a look at his video and then assess his findings or his analysis of what he thinks took place.
pathologist and Fox News contributor Dr. Michael Bodden joins us now about this most unusual case. Dr. Bodden, the authorities say there are no obvious signs of foul play, no external trauma to either individual. The drugs that were found scattered on the counter are not the kind that one would take if one wanted to end one's life, at least not as far as I've been told. What do you see going on here, and what would you ask for next in this investigation?
Well, from what the sheriff has said, that he had a pacemaker that was found at autopsy, and that the reading the pacemaker can be done, shows that he had an event, a cardiac event, about 9 days before. That event would have been a cardiac arrest caused by an abnormal pulse rate. The pacemaker keeps track of the pulse, and when it gets down too low, it discharges, and that's all in the record. So the autopsy showed he didn't have any injury. There was no carbon monoxide, and he had what the most common cause of death in this country is severe heart disease, coronary artery disease, and high blood pressure, perhaps, from what's been released. So, and that would cause him, having cardiac arrest in the mudroom, to collapse right there. His wife was found in the bathroom. They haven't released the information about her findings, except that she did not have carbon monoxide in her, and that what appears to be from the scene and from what's been said is that she found her husband in the mudroom, went to very excited, went to the bathroom to get the high blood pressure medication, and fell down, pulling a room heater down with her and spilling the pills on the floor, is what the scene sounds like from what the sheriff has released so far, and that she may have struck her head on the way down and have some internal injury to the brain that doesn't show up on the outside, or bleeding in the inside of the brain, or that she may also, at 65, had severe heart disease, and excitement can cause a trigger to the cardiac rhythm, causing death under those circumstances. I think the striking her head would be more common.
So you're saying this could be the unusual, I suppose, case of death essentially by natural causes.
That isn't clear.
A married couple. Well,
yes,
okay.
And the dog. What was perplexing to me initially, the release, was a death of a dog also, which I thought was free in the house, and that's why I think that the carbon monoxide was a very good thought, because they're breathing in the same air. But it turns out, from what they say, that the dog was constrained in his cage or kennel and would have died from just dehydration, lack of water, during the 9-day period that he couldn't get out of the kennel.
Wow. So it could just all be a terrible accident, I guess you would say, in the case of his wife, and really in his case as well.
The circumstances and who he was beloved by so many, are what makes it so unusual, because heart disease and collapsing and dying with a pacemaker is common in the United States. But the circumstances of the two of them isolated by themselves, and that may have been the reason that 911 wasn't called, for example, while his wife was trying to get him some medication and fell.
Wow. Dr. Michael Bodden, you always enlighten us on things like this. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
So yes, Dr. Bodden, always very thorough on this assessment, pretty much direct. Of course, when you've done this many years, many cases, I'm sure thousands of cases, he has a pretty good assessment. So again, first thought, as my thought as well, carbon monoxide. Again, the fact that Gene had a pacemaker, they can look at the forensic analysis of the device, of the data on the device, determine when that may have stopped or when there was fluctuation or any kind of changes or events or sudden events, such as cardiac arrest and so forth. We know that Mr. Hackman had high blood pressure. There was a mention of some um, cardiovascular issues. Now, they did find some pills scattered in the bathroom near Betsy. That's a little alarming. So, of course, you have to consider everything always. Everything's always in play until you know differently. And of course, the autopsy will determine some final thoughts as they have done already. Again, the dog in the crate, maybe officers mentioned the odor of gas, so we're not quite sure what all took place, but there were key clues in terms of this investigation. So the pacemaker activity showed some activity around February 17th through the 18th. They determined Betsy may have passed around the 12th or so, so it may have been before or after Jean, but they think maybe she passed before Jean, based upon just the forensic science, the pathology, and so forth. So the autopsies were performed on both. Also, as a result, some geolocation data has been analyzed. That can also tell you about movement on their cell phones and devices, right? The movement about the property, where they were in the house or in or outside the house. Of course, toxicology and testing was performed, and the fact that Betsy was found in the bathroom with a space heater, that's a little unusual, but I guess it's not because, I mean, they're elder and maybe she was cold or just, freshening up or whatever the case was, but you have to consider everything. So the question of whether that enhances the mummification process, experts were considering or are considering. Again, a thing about this is a thing about these kind of cases, well beloved actor, and this is considered a high profile case, just because of the nature of who they were. Very famous, um, beloved by many, 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 many films, and prestige career for decades, decades. And ironically, I was actually I did a binge watch of the Superman series the weekend right before this was announced. I don't know, just coincidental, but it kind of, it shocked me when I heard about this. And we were all sad to hear about Mr. Hackman and his wife. So again, the family, we have to consider also the family, respecting the family. But as you now may have seen many reports, they wanted to kind of seal, media, seal reports, seal records, seal the autopsy and pathology findings and so forth. But that wasn't necessarily done. So there were some court rulings and battles, but the family did want to kind of protect their privacy out of respect. And of course, the conditions of the bodies, if they said um, they were partially mummified when they were discovered. So of course, we don't want those pictures out in the public. I definitely am not going to show those pictures, even if I were to find them. So again, sensitivity, respect for their elders, respect for their families. That should not be done. That should have been respected. So the question is, of course, what do you think about the records being sealed and even the entire investigation? Of course, the public wants to know what happened to their beloved actor and his wife. We want to know. It sounds very unusual, and the press covered this highly. And of course, the records were sealed and ultimately released. The courts determined they would release the records. And just like the family thought, there was a tirade of images and posts showing video of finding the bodies and so forth. Hopefully, they did kind of hide that out of respect for them. But it was just as the family thought. So, again, be respectful. We should be respectful. Can't speak for everybody else, but and of course, for some reason, the public wants to see that, right? That is just strictly for the police. Sometimes parts of the investigation are strictly for the police and or sheriffs or agencies, for the detectives, because if there were something that happened, if there was foul play, we have to protect the integrity of the case. Um, it's not always nice. It's not always appreciated or desired by the public, but we have to respect the integrity because we get one chance to do it right. We get one chance to prove it and one chance to screw it up also. We don't want to do that. That is definitely not what we want to do. So my understanding is that there's been some new twists and new findings in the case, and there was a neighbor recently that was arrested. This was as of last week or so. We'll see what comes of that, but there was an arrest made, something about a video, and some other elements. So as far as the cause of death, The pathology report and autopsies were completed. The findings were determined from the autopsy. Mr. Hackman actually had hypertension and cardiovascular issues. So with those cardiovascular issues and his age, that was of concern. But apparently, he also had Alzheimer's disease, severe Alzheimer's, and based upon the forensic analysis of the pacemaker, um, it was determined that was maybe natural causes and brought on by lack of care and so forth. And then Betsy was found to have the hantavirus. Cause was a rare disease transmitted by rodents. So there were uh, many issues with their home being overrun by rodents, and that was discovered and found on some different body cams and so forth. But the reason that factors in is because that disease is very rare and it's caused by transmission from those rodents. The mummification and decomposition of the bodies, that's also of consideration. The fascinating thing about the forensic pathology is they can determine time, they can determine approximate times of the decomposition, approximate time of death based upon temperature, the weather over the past few weeks, when they found them, the position of the bodies, and so forth. So this is like a scientific uh, analysis, a scientific and medical analysis of the pathology, the forensics. That's separate from our digital forensics that the examiners conducted with the cell phone devices, with the camera surveillance, with the computer searches and the data and emails and calls and everything else that factors in, again, determining where they were about in the house or outside at any time, trips to the stores and so forth. All that is the detectives and the analysts that determine, what happened, what took place, what kind of searches. So there were some data searches from Betsy of, being sick. I believe she left a message saying G, meaning Jean, doesn't feel well. So she went to the store and she was trying to give some kind of care. On behalf of this couple, again, their home was, respectfully, the home was found infested with rodents, nesting, and feces. So that contributed to the hantavirus being transmitted to her. And I believe she tested both of themselves for COVID. The test came back negative. So maybe that was her initial thought of maybe they had COVID. Of course, they were already living kind of privately in seclusion. And then with the events of COVID taking place in the past few years and still active, again, they were kind of more private at that point in time. So this was not a good result. Definitely a tragic finding with their outcome. So some facts about the hantavirus. It's transmitted from animal to human, typically in rodents. Usually found mortality rate for the virus is about 38 to 50% for the hantavirus. As far as exposure goes, exposure can happen in various ways through urine, saliva, droppings of infected rodents. Again, simply sweeping out dirty sheds or crawling around dusty areas. If they make contact with the surfaces that we occupy, the surfaces that we touch and or so forth, or occupy, just like the home or garage, spilling food and so forth. So the cleanup is crucial, wearing a mask and so forth. But again, just some elements of what the hantavirus is and how that factors in to this case particularly. It's unfortunate to have that occur. Some findings for the forensic analysis, as we talked about, the pathology for the autopsy. That's the medical examiners, that is the coroners that conduct that. As far as the digital components, that is the detectives and or sheriffs and analysts that will look at the data as they did, right? So they looked at the last emails, internet searches again. Again, Betsy had flu-like symptoms, or what she thought. So she was looking up various symptoms for various illnesses, headaches, dizziness, respiratory distress, and so forth. And she mentioned that she thought he may have had COVID. So they did test themselves for that. And a review of the computer also showed February 8th in the morning of the 12th she was researching COVID symptoms, so and flu-like symptoms. So she was aware, obviously, and maybe she thought they could get ahead of it with medications or just going to the store, calling their doctors, and kind of treating it. So again, maybe they thought it was just a basic common cold, and then unfortunately, the disease overtook them or overtook her, and as a result, with him being left without care, the outcome again. So again, part of the new investigation, there's evidence of the neighbor, someone being arrested, and they're looking at the timeline, essentially. The unlocked entrance, not a huge factor, but it can, depending upon what they found, what the new findings are. And those pills scattered, I'm sure they tested the pills along with toxicology being performed on both individuals. Again, maybe there's some items that were missing. They found 2 cell phones and a monthly planner. So again, in any case, any investigation, timeline is always a factor. Why do we say that? Because data is archived, surveillance can be archived, timeline, geo-tracking, the forensic analysis of the devices, again, the movement and so forth. Everything has some kind of archive or element that can be correlated with one another to determine, what happened, when it took place, maybe when a person collapsed and or how long they've been down. So there will be more to follow with this case. We're going to keep an eye on the outcome, the new evidence that's happened, and dial back to this. This is the Dr. Detective series, a true crime podcast, a PhD true crime podcast. Again, I want to say on behalf of the victims, the Hackmans, prayers out to the family, condolences, and as always, please continue to like and subscribe, share, and post some comments if you have questions or just comments and about where you think the case is going. What do you think this new evidence means? So I want to thank you for watching, and please, please, please like and subscribe. More to come. Thanks for watching.